Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the Agoura Hills City Council meeting. This meeting is being conducted in person in the council chambers and also by utilizing video conferencing. Please silence all cell phones and other electronic devices and do not access Zoom during the live meeting, as we will cause interference with the audiovisual system in the council chambers. Tonight's meeting may be viewed on the Zoom via the link on the agenda, by live stream on YouTube by entering Agoura Hills City Council meeting in your browser and clicking on the link for June 14th, 2023, or view the live or archive meeting on the city's website at agourahillscity.org and click on the Watch Meetings Online button. I will now defer to the city clerk.
Thank you, Mayor Anstead. There will be an opportunity for the public to speak on any item listed on the agenda. Any person in the council chambers who wishes to speak or submit a written comment is requested to complete a comment card for each item and submit to the city clerk prior to the public comment portion of the item. Comments submitted at the meeting will be provided to the city council for review and filed with the official record. For any person participating remotely, written public comments were requested to be emailed by 4 p.m. today and distributed to the city council in advance of the meeting. To request to speak during public comment, please click on the raise hand button on the Zoom toolbar. Request to speak must be received prior to the mayor closing the public comment portion of the item. Public testimony for all speakers is limited to 3 minutes per speaker. Written public comments will not be read aloud by the city clerk. For full details, please refer to the public participation section on the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. I will now call the meeting to order. And for the Pledge of Allegiance, I'd like Councilmember Wolf, if you could lead us. Much. I will now defer to the city clerk for a roll call vote.
Good evening. Councilmember Lopez?
Here.
Councilmember Sylvester?
Here.
Councilmember Wolf?
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Buckley Weber?
Here.
Mayor Anstead?
Here.
Mayor Anstead, you have a quorum.
Thank you very much. No closed session was held this evening, so there's no report out on that. On the approval of the agenda, will the maker of a motion to approve the agenda and a second please state your names?
Councilmember Sylvester makes a motion to approve the agenda.
Thank you. Do I have a
Mayor
second?
Pro Tem Buckley Weber seconds the motion.
Thank you. I'll now defer to the city clerk for roll call vote.
Councilmember Lopez?
Aye.
Councilmember Sylvester?
Aye.
Councilmember Wolf?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Buckley Weber?
Aye.
Mayor Anstead?
Aye.
Mayor Anstead, you have approval 5-0.
Thank you very much. We'll now move into intergovernmental special purpose committee and departmental reports. And first up is we have a exciting report on Raise Adobe Days 2023 from our recreation manager, Nick Newkirk.
Good evening, Mayor and honorable council members. This evening, I bring to you a brief update for the Raise Adobe Days for 2023. Next slide. The city staff and Raise Adobe Days Committee has been hard at work since back in January to start planning for this year's event. It will be the 19th annual Raise Adobe Days to be held the weekend of October 6th through the 8th. Most of the festivities are over at Raise Adobe Park. But the reason for me coming this evening is we are very excited and honored and thrilled and humbled to be able to announce this year's Raise Adobe Days Grand Marshal. And this year's Raise Adobe Days Grand Marshal is Matt McKagan has graciously accepted the honor to be this year's Raise Adobe Days Grand Marshal. For those of you that don't know, Matt McKagan was the band director at Lindero Canyon Middle School, and as of today, has retired from Las Virgenes Unified School District. At his retirement celebration, they announced that he taught roughly 10,000 students over his 33 years, my daughter being one of them. He has also been our own community concert and jazz band director on 2 separate occasions for multiple years. He is an Agoura Hills resident, he is an avid bike rider, and he is thrilled to be this year's Grand Marshal, and we are absolutely thrilled to have him. Next slide. So we will be bringing more reports to you with more details for the event as we get closer, so probably sometime in August. But in the meantime, we will start working on updating the Race Adobe Days website, which you can view on your screen, raceadobedays.org. That will have all the information on traffic and parking and schedule of events and parade applications and sponsorship applications and all the other fun stuff we do for Race Adobe Days. So look forward to that. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that great news. Appreciate it. We're very excited for Raise Adobe Days, so sounds great. Looking forward to the parade, as usual. All right, any other reports from staff? No? All right, any reports from City Council? No? All right, we'll move into public comments. This section is reserved for persons wishing to speak on items not listed on the agenda that are under the subject matter jurisdiction of the City Council. For council chamber attendees, please submit a public comment card to the city clerk. For Zoom attendees, please click the raise hand button on the Zoom toolbar now. Public testimony is limited to 3 minutes per speaker, and a speaker's time may not be transferred to another speaker. Persons addressing the council shall not engage in disorderly conduct that disrupts or otherwise impedes the orderly conduct of the meeting. We respectfully request that if you have something to distribute to the council, you hand it to our city clerk and do not approach the dais. I'll now defer to the city clerk for public comments.
Thank you, Mayor Anstead. We did not receive any written public comments, but we do have one speaker card. Sherry Ferber.
Okay. Yep. Sherry, for Kathy, we'll have comments at the end, and so I'll definitely leave it open for you then. Any other comments?
Thank you. No further comments. I'll defer to staff for any remote participants. Amber?
Thank you, Mayor Anstead. No hands are raised to speak on this item.
Thank you. We'll now move on to the, now move on to the consent calendar. This section is reserved for persons wishing to speak on items on the consent calendar. For council chamber attendees, please submit a public comment card to the city clerk. For Zoom attendees, please click the raise hand button on the Zoom toolbar now. Public testimony is limited to 3 minutes per speaker, and a speaker's time may not be transferred to another speaker. We respectfully request that if you have something to distribute to the council, you hand it to our city clerk and do not approach the dais. I will now defer to the city clerk for public comments.
Thank you, Mayor Anstead. No written public comments have been received and no speaker cards have been submitted. I'll now defer to staff for any remote participants.
Thank you, Mayor Anstead. No hands are raised to speak on this item.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from city council or comments on the consent calendar before we move forward? None that I see. All right, well, I now call for a motion and a second to adopt the consent calendar. Do I have a motion?
Mayor Pro Tem Buckley Weber moves to adopt tonight's consent calendar.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second. This is Deborah Klein-Lopez.
Thank you very much. I'll now defer to the city clerk for a roll call vote.
Councilmember Lopez?
Aye.
Councilmember Sylvester?
Aye.
Councilmember Wolf?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Buckley Weber?
Aye.
Mayor Anstead?
Aye.
Mayor Anstead, you have approval 5-0.
Thank you. Our next item up is the public hearing on the ordinance. Is to consider ordinance number 23-470 to add provisions to the outdoor dining design and operational standards and amend the off-street parking provisions to allow outdoor dining opportunities and making a finding of exemption under the California Environmental Quality Act. I will now open the public hearing and defer to the Community Development Director, Denise Thomas, for staff presentation.
Good evening, Mayor, Honorable Council. My name is Denise Thomas. I'm the Community Development Director. This evening, we're bringing before you a proposed ordinance amendment that would allow us to amend the municipal code to incorporate some provisions that would allow the continuation of outdoor dining permits. This has been going on as a temporary option for business owners since the pandemic, and now we want to bring to you something that's a bit more permanent now that the pandemic and the declaration has been lifted. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Jessica Clevenger. She is our principal planner, and she's the project manager on this project.
Thank you, Denise. Good evening, Mayor Anstead, honorable members of the council. Let's jump right in with today's agenda, or this evening's agenda. We're going to start by talking about the project directives, and then we're going to touch on some of the research that staff did in order to propose the draft ordinance. And then we'll talk about the background and outreach that we did to some of the local restaurants, the proposed ordinance amendments themselves, and the next steps and staff's recommendation. Next slide, please. There really was only one directive with this project, and that was to add provisions to the existing ordinance that would allow restaurants to continue to offer outdoor dining opportunities at their local establishments. In order to meet this directive, staff is proposing to amend the regulatory process to more thoroughly review outdoor dining permits. Amending the ordinance will ensure that there's adequate parking provisions. It'll also ensure that the additional seating does not impact the existing LA County health requirements, and it will ensure that the fire department access requirements and ADA standards are met. Next slide, please. To prepare for this ordinance, staff researched 14 different adopted or pending ordinances from local jurisdictions or jurisdictions around California. What we found for the most part was that the city of Agoura Hills differs from a lot of the jurisdictions that have outdoor dining ordinance, in that Agoura Hills, all of their outdoor dining is currently taking place on private property. So with the rest of these jurisdictions, cities and counties alike, a lot of their outdoor dining was taking place on public areas. So we're talking about rights of way, sidewalks. In some cases, they were even closing down streets. In those cases, what the city or the jurisdiction would have to do is charge that restaurateur square footage, a fee square footage, because they were using public property. But that's one thing that we don't have to do with the city of Agoura Hills, which is kind of nice. It kind of simplifies our ordinance. Next slide, please. So a little bit of background. In June of 2020 is when staff first started issuing temporary outdoor operation permits, or TOOPs as we called them. We've extended these TOOPs until February of 2024. At the peak of permit issuance, we had 25 different facilities that were obtaining TOOPs. And currently we have, to our knowledge, 13 different restaurants that have expressed an interest in turning their TOOPs to a permanent permit. With regard to outreach, in February of 2023, staff began conducting site visits and phone calls to local restaurants that either have an active TOOP or have had a TOOP in the past. Staff performed the site visits, 13 of them, to local restaurants, and 2 phone interviews. During these interviews, we would ask the restaurants how many patrons that they felt still preferred to eat outside, and on average, we came up with 62% of the patrons still desired to eat outside, even after COVID has essentially ended. Those restaurants that have a desire to turn their TOOP into a permanent permit, 7 of those expressed the fact that they did not anticipate making any additional permanent changes to their outdoor dining areas, while 6 of them anticipate making some changes, probably including proposing railings and some sort of screening or shade structure. In May 18th, staff brought the proposed ordinance to the Planning Commission during a regularly scheduled public hearing. And since that time, staff has continued to meet with interested restaurant owners and property owners regarding the draft ordinance. We've also created a link on our website so that the restaurant owners or interested parties can take a look at what the draft ordinance actually entails. Next slide, please. There are 2 existing sections within the municipal code that staff is anticipating amending. The first section is 9395, the Outdoor Dining Design and Operational Standards section. Within this section, staff proposes clarifying the existing standards or regulations that govern the outdoor dining permits. We also anticipate incorporating fire department regulations regarding access and plumbing code regulations regarding the sanitation facilities, and requiring a posting of a point of contact to address complaints when they're received. Additionally, staff is proposing to add a new section, 9395.2, to address regulating the permitting process. As it stands now, the code is silent when a restaurant owner expands into their outdoor area with 1 to 3 tables. This means, as the code stands now, that the city does not condition and has very little regulations for 3 tables or fewer. 4 or more tables currently requires approval by the Community Development Director. Staff is proposing creating a zoning clearance process for expansions of 1 to 3 tables. And 4 or more tables, the application would either be reviewed by the Community Development Director if that expansion is 10% or less of their existing interior seating and waiting area, or by the Planning Commission if that increases more than 10% of their existing interior and seating waiting area. And the rationale behind the 10% comes directly from the plumbing code, It is, as it's a requirement to potentially increase your sanitation facilities if you exceed that 10% metric. Finally, staff is anticipating amending a new or adding a new section 9395.3 to incorporate the findings for approval of the outdoor dining permits. Next section, or slide, please. The second section of the municipal code that staff is proposing to amend is 9654.3, which is the parking allocation table. With regards to the proposed amendment, staff is anticipating amending the existing parking requirement for restaurants from 15 spaces per 1,000 square feet of seating and waiting area to the ITE, which is the International Transportation Engineer Standard, of an average of 9.6 spaces per 1,000 square feet of existing gross floor area. The ITE standards are a nationally recognized set of parking demand standards based on a collection of documented research studies. Next slide, please. Currently, the ordinance is tentatively scheduled for City Council on June 28th for the second reading. Once adopted, staff will perform additional outreach to the local restaurants and will update the city's webpage to include materials needed to apply for the permanent permit. On July 28th, the ordinance will take effect, and the restaurants that currently have an active TOOP will have 7 months to apply for their permanent permit if they choose to do so. In February of 2024, the TOOPs will expire. Next slide, please. With that, staff respectfully recommends that the City Council conduct a public hearing, waive a full reading, and introduce ordinance number 23470, amending Article 9 of the Agoura Hills Municipal Code to add provisions to the outdoor dining design and operational standards, and amend the off-street parking provisions and make a finding of exemption under CEQA. And that is all for the staff's presentation. I'm here for questions.
Thank you. We'll now move to public comments. Written public comments were requested to be emailed in advance of tonight's meeting. If you wish to speak, please click the raised hand button on the Zoom toolbar now. Public testimony is limited to 3 minutes per speaker, and a speaker's time may not be transferred to another speaker. We respectfully request that if you have something to distribute to the council, you hand it to your city clerk and do not approach the dais. The public hearing is open. I will now defer to the city clerk for public comments.
Thank you, Mayor Anstead. No written public comments have been received. No speaker cards have been submitted. I'll now defer to staff for any remote participants.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Anstead. There are hands raised to speak on this item. Before we begin live testimony, if you have your hand raised but do not intend to speak on this item, please take a moment now to click on the lower hand tab on your screen. Requests to speak must be received prior to the mayor closing the public comment portion of the item. Speakers will be called in the order they appear on my screen. Public comments are limited to 3 minutes per speaker. A 30-second notice will be provided by the clerk, and the microphone will be muted when the 3 minutes have expired. Prior to speaking, please clearly state your first and last name and provide your city of residence for the record. After that spiel, he put down his hand. So I believe he's speaking at a later item.
Okay, no other comments, public comments? So I want to move into actually questions from city council members to staff. So I have a question, Councilmember Lopez.
I have a couple questions. Thank you. It's been a few months since this item came before us in the Land Use and Economic Development Subcommittee meeting, and at that time, a big concern was the plumbing, and the issue that the square footage that restaurants, if we made this permanent, they would have to include that outdoor space in their overall square footage, and that may push them by code, as you mentioned, to have to increase their restroom facilities, their plumbing facilities. So I see that in there, but what changed? Because I know that was a big concern for restaurants. So have we gotten around that, or?
No, nothing has changed. We can't get around the plumbing code, unfortunately. So when they do apply for their permanent permit, they will have to tell us, what % of increase it is, and then we're going to have to look and figure out. They'll also provide to us how many restrooms they have: female restrooms, male restrooms, urinals, and then we'll have to compare that to the plumbing code to find out whether or not they might have to reduce one of their tables, or if they have some room to expand to additional ones.
So do we know, just because we have so few, do we know at all how many restaurants may kind of fall into that category of maybe needing to make their outdoor spaces smaller so that they don't have to invest in expanding their restrooms, which is a whole, that's a huge expense for them.
Sure. From what we know, and we didn't have accurate information, that information is going to have to come from them with regards to the square footage. But from what we were able to gather from existing permits that they have had through the city, with what they have now, they will not need to expand. But I mean, as a caveat, they'll have to show us how much square footage they actually have, and it's going to be up to them as to what they propose to. So we haven't had anybody obviously propose for the permanent ordinance.
Right.
Some of them might propose more tables and seating than they have right now, and we didn't compare that. We did a rough calculation on if they increased by 10%, if they increased by 20%. Obviously, if they increased by 20%, there were quite a few restaurants that would have to expand their sanitation facilities, but there were only a couple if they expanded like 10% or just slightly over 10%.
Okay, so if they do come back to us and they give us a square footage that then, triggers the plumbing issue, staff would go back and work with them and explain the situation, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, great. My next question is about parking. And I know that was a big topic at the Planning Commission meeting a few weeks ago. They had a lot of questions about that. So I just want to make sure I understand what that answer was. It sounds like, because that's a huge change in parking to go from 15 to 9, if I'm remembering it correctly. But what I heard from the Planning Commission meeting, if I understood correctly, we're kind of already operating at the 9 or so level just because they've been in existence like this for 3 years. Are you expecting anything? Because to me, that's the only downside of making this permanent is that, if we reduce parking, that could be an issue. But it sounded to me like we've already reduced parking.
We have effectively already reduced parking for the last 3 years that we have been issuing the temporary permits, and staff has not received complaints from anybody in the city regarding, a lack of parking. We understand that in some cases there will be fewer parking spaces on a permanent level. We're also hopeful that that's going to encourage more alternative modes of transportation in some of these instances, which would be great for our GHG levels and our cap and everything as well. Mm-hmm. But we don't anticipate any kind of huge shortfall with regards to parking.
Okay, so we haven't received any complaints from people, from property owners, nothing about parking so far, which we're kind of already operating at that proposed level.
That's correct.
Okay. And then my last question is, are we proposing a fee for this permit?
So currently we, as I mentioned in the staff report and in the presentation, we don't impose a fee or a permit or anything when they expand 1 to 3 tables. Mm-hmm. What we're proposing so that we're able to condition and maybe better regulate some of these expansions is to impose a zoning clearance fee. We currently have a plan check fee, which is $68. So that would be like a minimal level fee for those permits. Also, right now in the existing ordinance, we have an outdoor dining permit fee, which is $1,413. That fee would be carried over to the director level, so the minor level outdoor dining permits would have that same fee. Then for the Planning Commission level ones, it would just be the outdoor dining permit fee of $1,413 plus the public hearing fee, the public notification fee, which we are required to charge. So that one would be $2,474. And we anticipate those permits being coupled along with something like an expansion for a restaurant facility. So they might be applying for a CUP or a site plan review or something else that would need to be reviewed by the Planning Commission as well. So that would be put in with their CUP fee or their site plan review fee.
Okay, so for a restaurant that did not have any outdoor dining before COVID, they would have to pay that $1,400 or whatever it turns out to be now? Because I know the Toops we didn't charge.
So if a restaurant, prior to COVID, if a restaurant had 4 or more tables, they had to get an outdoor dining permit. And that one was reviewed solely by the Planning Commission or the Community Development Director, and that fee was $1,413. So that's still the mid-level fee. It would still be the level that the Community Development Director would review. The only additional fees would be if it's 1 to 3 tables, it would be $68. That's the permit level we're not currently regulating. or it would be the ones that would go to the Planning Commission, which would just be the additional public hearing fee or public notification fee.
Okay, so I'm sorry to beat a dead horse. I just want to make sure I understand this. So a restaurant like, say, Law Merch, okay, they did not have any outdoor dining. They have more than 4 tables. We didn't charge them for the tubes. Now they're going to have to come back and pay probably 4 figures for a permanent outdoor dining fee, a permanent outdoor dining permit.
That's correct.
Okay.
Prior to COVID, if they got an outdoor dining permit, it would have been the 4
Okay.
figures.
Okay. I just want to make sure our restaurants know, like, as we go into this permanent thing, what changes they, would be facing if they want to continue. Okay, thank you. Those are my questions. Thank you.
No problem. Councilmember.
To be clear, it's a one-time fee?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Buckley Weber.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a couple of questions. Is the applicant the landlord, the property owner, or is it the restaurant, or both?
It could be either, but when the application comes in, we are going to require that the property owner also sign the application so that we know that they understand what's being proposed on their property.
Great, thank you. The new section 9395.3, the findings. Can you tell me what are the findings what are those findings going to be?
I can tell you what they are. They're in the draft ordinance or the proposed draft ordinance. So the proposed outdoor dining use is consistent with the general plan and any specific plans that have been adopted for the area. That's A, there's 4 of them. The proposed outdoor dining use will not adversely affect existing or anticipated development in the vicinity and will promote the harmonious development in the area. The proposed outdoor dining use will not create any significant parking or traffic impacts, traffic safety hazards, pedestrian vehicle conflicts, pedestrian safety hazards, and will not impede the safe or orderly flow of pedestrians along the public right-of-way. And the last one is the proposed outdoor dining use will not be detrimental to public health, safety, or general welfare.
Okay, great. Thank you. Going to the parking issue, I just want to confirm, because I watched the Planning Commission meeting, and the reduction in parking spaces only applies to restaurants. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. Let's see. Section 9395.1 BC has a section in it that addresses design materials and colors, lightings, awnings, umbrellas, all of that. And it generally, the way I read this is that the new outdoor dining needs to be generally consistent with both the architectural style and colors used on the building, facade, and quality of the shopping center fixtures. And that will be the decision made by the community development director.
That's correct.
Okay. And the center itself is not particularly what we're trying to achieve in the city of Agoura Hills. It's a little subjective, so.
It's discretionary, and we would try to work with both the property owner and the restaurateur. We would want to make sure that the restaurant is well represented, but we also want to make sure that it's cohesive with the center.
Okay, and because one of the things that I've seen at a couple of outdoor dining facilities is artificial ivy, and I wouldn't think that would be consistent with the shopping center, but I just didn't know what your thoughts on that were.
We can't necessarily regulate artificial plants. However, we do have the ability with this ordinance to have discretion over barriers and enclosures and some of the screening. So if they were trying to cover the entire outdoor area with artificial ivy, we would have some discretion and try to work with them to maybe put something in or install something that would be a better representation of the city itself.
Great. Let's see. That was my only concern. Thank you.
Councilmember Sylvester, do you have any questions?
I think most of my questions have been asked, but we've never had any negative feedback from expanding onto the sidewalks and parking lots since we've started doing this the last couple of years. Is that correct?
At a certain point, kind of at the peak of COVID, some of the tubes, we got a couple of complaints because they were on the sidewalks, but we talked to the restaurant owners and they reduced those back. So everything that's been proposed probably for the last year, we have not gotten any complaints about, and it's been on private property.
Good. And by doing this, we are promoting our local restaurants and their intake.
Absolutely.
Good, thank you.
Thank you. One of my main question deals with the parking spaces as well. I wondered, where did the 15 spaces, where did we get that from? Where did that come from? Because I noticed the 9.6 came from the international standards, but when we first came up with the 15 per 1,000 feet, was that pulled out of thin air, or was there a standard for that?
That was well before my time. I can't remember the last time, or I'm not aware of the last time that the parking ordinance was updated, and I'm not sure if that was something that was given to us, when we adopted the municipal code.
Okay, but the 9.6 is in line with the international I can't remember the name specifically, but it was international standard.
International Transportation Engineer Standard, that's correct, yes.
Do other cities in our area use that standard, or do you know whether they do or not? I'm just trying to understand what other cities are doing.
I know of some cities that do, not necessarily the cities within our area. A lot of them have just a standard parking allocation that may be outdated as well. And I'm not sure where they pulled that standard from either. Not all of them are the same as the 15 per 1,000 square feet, though. They really range. It varies depending on local jurisdiction.
Okay. All right, thank you. That was my main question. Before we move on to deliberations, does any other council member have any further comments or questions?
Sorry, just to follow
Yeah,
up on
sure.
what you just said.
Sure.
So potentially, could we be opening ourselves up to other restaurants, even if they don't have outdoor, saying they would like to have the 9 spaces instead of the 15?
So the 9.6 will be available to any restaurant within the city, whether it had.
Going forward.
Correct, yes.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, we'll now move on to deliberations. Mayor Pro Tem Buckley Weber, why don't I start with you?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't have any problem with this. We've been doing it for 3 years. Our residents have routinely emailed me about how much they've enjoyed the outdoor dining, so I don't see a problem. My only concern is the aesthetics of it. It's been temporary, so I've had no problem with it, but now that we're moving into permanent increased dining space, I would like it to be more consistent with the character of the city of Agoura Hills. The reduced parking, I don't think we're going to have a problem. I guess we'll find out, but it has been happening for the last few years, and I have not had any complaints myself that there's not been enough parking at places. So let's give it a try, and I think it's going to work out just fine. I have no problems. I'm ready to move forward.
Thank you, Councilmember Sylvester.
I'm ready to move forward.
Excellent. Sounds good. Councilmember Wolf.
I appreciate the staff time that's gone into this. We were in such an unknown for such a long time, and now I think we've grappled with it. Now we have a good understanding of what it looks like. So I feel very comfortable with this plan. I feel like it provides a good opportunity for businesses, especially our restaurants, to expand their footprint. And it was successful during COVID, so I can make all the findings. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Councilmember Lopez.
Thank you. I love that 62% of our residents or consumers still prefer to dine outdoors at some point. I think that says it all. We were one of the very first cities, we were just saying that we were one of the very first cities to adopt an ordinance to expand outdoor dining during COVID. So I'm happy to see this come to fruition as a little bit of a silver lining from COVID. There have been a few of them, and this is one of them, that we're able to support our businesses and our restaurants and provide a service that our residents obviously love. So ready to proceed.
Excellent. And my thoughts on it are I'm actually excited about putting standards on this outdoor dining and have it be more permanent, that we are going to let our restaurants kind of expand and have more outdoor dining. I think that's what we live in, a beautiful place, and to have more outdoor restaurants and as something that's a positive, and at the same time we're reducing the number of parking, hopefully reducing the number of vehicles as well, and encouraging more people to use bikes and public transportation and other things that cut down on the environmental impact. So I think it's all a positive. So I'm ready to move forward as well. So I'll now call for a motion and a second to waive full reading, introduce ordinance 23-470 and make a finding of exemption under California Environmental Quality Act. Will the maker of the motion and a second please state your names? Do I have a motion?
Councilmember Sylvester so moves.
Excellent. Do I have a second?
I'll second. This is Deborah Klein Lopez.
Thank you. I'll now defer to the city clerk for a roll call vote.
Councilmember Lopez,
Aye.
Councilmember Sylvester,
Aye.
Councilmember Wolf,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Buckley Weber,
Aye.
Mayor Anstead.
Aye.
Mayor Anstead, you have approval 5-0.
Thank you very much. Excellent. Thank you. Our next item up for discussion is to consider authorization to purchase a prefabricated public restroom for the Chumash Park restroom renovation project. I will now defer to the Director of Community Services, Amy Brink, for the staff presentation.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Anstead and honorable council members. Next slide, please. This evening, staff is presenting the City Council with the Chumash Park restroom renovation project. Upon completion of the Sumac Park restoration renovation project in December of 2022, the City Council identified the Chumash Park restroom as the next public restroom to be renovated. Chumash Park, as you can see in the pictures here, is a much older building that houses restroom facilities for both men and women, along with a small electrical storage closet. With the lack of efficient resources, outdated amenities, and an aging infrastructure, the entire building is in need of replacement, unlike Sumac, where we could actually salvage more of the building. Next slide, please. There is a need for more restroom stalls, increased lighting, updated fixtures, aesthetically better decor, a stronger security system, and more effective flooring. After several public workshops, numerous community services subcommittee meetings, and feedback from other local agencies, it was determined that the most efficient and cost-effective approach for the city to replacing the restroom was to remove the existing building and replace it with a prefabricated restroom building. Next slide, please. A community workshop was held back on April 4th to provide the residents an opportunity to see the project and provide input on the elements. Those comments, along with comments and feedback received via email, have been incorporated into what is being presented this evening. Next slide, please. The goals for this evening are to review the project, approve the color palette, materials, and design, authorize the purchase and the installation of the prefabricated structure, and authorize the city manager to sign the agreement and purchase order. Next slide, please. So let's talk Chumash Park. Next slide, please. I put this slide up here because this is actually what I believe was the inspiration for city staff and the Community Services Subcommittee when selecting the colors and the design for the building. For those of you who don't know, this is the Medea Creek Bridge and the beautiful landscaping around it. I think it's one of the most iconic features in our city. I think it's beautiful, and I think that our residents really enjoy it. So with that, next slide, please. We're presenting a restroom this evening that will offer colors and decor and materials and texture that will blend really nicely with that bridge. You'll see a dark metal bronze roof. The top, well, I'll go through the colors if we just go down the color palette. That top dark brown color is a dark bronze metal roof, which is similar to the one that's on Sumac and actually on the Event Center. The fascia and the trim and all the doors will come in a charcoal gray color. Everything in sort of the top third of the building will be in that dark charcoal gray. Then the bulk of the building will be that light tan, off-white. We've got a lot of different names for it. It's called Seriously Sand, which I actually love. And it's a little bit more of an off-white color, similar to Sumac, but a little bit more in the earthy tone. And you're gonna see that wrap the entire outside of the building, and it's gonna be a light stucco finish. Then below that is a pewter dark charcoal colored cap that will sit on top of the wainscoting that's going to wrap the entire, probably bottom third of the building. And then the most exciting for us as staff and our landscape crew, that bottom right kind of speckled color image there is what the flooring will look like. Right now, the flooring is, it's 35-year-old cement flooring with probably a lot of stories to tell. So we're very excited about that speckled flooring. Next slide, please. Let's talk about amenities and layout now that we've done the color palette. Some of the proposed amenities that we're actually very excited about are, if you can get excited about a bathroom, are 3 restroom stalls, urinals for women and men, 2 all-gender restrooms, which was clearly identified from the city council as a desire to see in these bathrooms. A drinking fountain and a water bottle filling station, a larger electrical storage closet, solar tubes, updated fixtures, increase in signage for ADA purposes and identification, and the foundation will also be significantly upgraded, including plumbing and electrical. Next slide, please. Included in your report this evening is a copy of the layout of what the bathroom will actually look like. It's fairly similar to the existing structure, although it's a little thinner. And I mean it really a little thinner and a little bit longer. And as our favorite engineer from Kimley Horn, Patrick Wong, says, it's a little bit more rectangular than it is right now. It was a very engineering term, which I actually loved. That's a copy of the footprint. It includes the restroom. That's good. You can leave it on that side. It includes the 2 stalls for the men and the women. There are 3 urinals in the women. It has the 2 all gender on the back side of the building with their own access. And it'll also include baby changing stations as well. It comes with all the amenities, grab bars, hand dryers, sinks, mirrors. We're very excited about all of the upgrade and the amenities. That is a copy, that was an example of the elevation. We can leave it at this one. Here's our final elevation, and this is a draft plan similar to what the building will look like. Because the Community Services Subcommittee just met last week and decided on the final color scheme, we have the scheme here that has not been updated with the charcoal gray and the top third of the building, but this should give you an idea of what it will look like. So it's similar to what the building will look like. Also in this picture, you will notice that behind the drinking fountain, there's small tiles in the alcove. That's actually an option that we chose to upgrade. There will not be those small tiles. It'll just be the right, nice, smooth stucco finish to make the building look really clean, really smooth. And if a public restroom can look classy and sophisticated, that's what we're going for. So no tiles on the front. The light sand color wraps around the building, and everything that from the top third of the building will be that charcoal gray color. I actually think it's going to look really sharp. In order to purchase the park restroom, staff is recommending the use of the national purchasing program that the city joined 2 years ago. Sourcewell is a national purchasing program that establishes an alliance between buyers and suppliers for use by educational, government, and nonprofit organizations. The city is an approved member of Sourcewell and identified the public restroom company as a company that the city could work with. Staff incorporated feedback gathered at the public workshops, information from the Community Services Subcommittee, and various ideas from the outreach collected during the park restroom master planning back in 2020. The public restroom company restroom design specific to Chumash Park that includes all of those features that we just mentioned has a proposed cost of $510,000. $478,075 is for the purchase of the building that will be delivered and dropped onto a pad. $31,185 will be towards the actual installation of the building once it arrives. The project will be funded using Measure A, the Measure A allocation funds of $173,909, and the remaining general funds of $450,000. The project is included in the fiscal year 2023-24 budget, and staff hopes the project to be completed in late fall of 2023. The design, including the color palette and materials, has been reviewed and approved by the Community Services Subcommittee. Staff respectfully recommends that the City Council approve the public restroom company design, including color and materials presented, authorize the purchase and installation of a prefabricated park restroom at Chumash Park by the public restroom company in the amount not to exceed $510,000. The city manager may approve additional work up to 10% of the amount of the agreement. Any additional work in excess of this amount shall be approved by the City Council. And finally, authorize the city manager to sign the purchase order and agreement on behalf of the City of Agoura Hills. So, with a very excited and enthusiastic attitude, that concludes my report for tonight, and I'm here to answer questions.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
And I will also say, I'm very happy to say that we have some former Community Services Committee members in the audience this evening, so I am very honored to be able to do this with them here.
Excellent.
That concludes my report.
Thank you very much for that comprehensive report. Before we move on to public comments, does any council member have questions of city staff? Sure, Councilmember Lopez.
I have one question. I had a question here, and you mentioned it briefly, so I just want to clarify. There will be changing tables. Are they in both men and women, or where? How many? What are the locations?
And I'd like to also say that I have JT Treichler, our management analyst, here tonight. He's my right-hand man on this project, so I'm going to phone a friend if I don't know the answer for sure.
Okay.
We've got baby stations in both of the family, in the all-gender
Got it.
bathrooms.
Perfect. Thank you. That's it.
Councilmember Wolf.
So I have two questions, and so I understand this is prefab, so I don't know if it would be possible, but with the water bottle refill station, is it just two drinking fountains, or is there the actual water bottle refill mechanism where it's censored?
It's the water bottle filling station with the drinking fountain.
Okay, but in the model or in the rendering, it's not there, is that correct?
That's correct, because that actually, after the public workshops and the community services subcommittee, we upgraded and added the water bottle filling station, and that's not reflected in our new rendering just yet.
Oh, that's fantastic. I think it's such a great amenity. The other question is, will there be any improved lighting for like safety purposes? And I don't know if we can do that. I don't know if that's, is that something that's even been thought about? Like floodlights on the outside?
So the building will have LED lighting, new LED lighting on the outside of the bathroom, and which we have, I think we have 2 lights there right now, which are really poor lighting. So yes, there will be LED lights. I believe it's 6 of them on the outside of the building. We can confirm that while we're chatting.
And is that an improvement from the current situation there?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Great. Thank you. That concludes my questions. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Buckles-Weber.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Amy. A question on the prefabrication. So they drop down the actual building, and then do you apply the wainscot?
So the entire building is going to be constructed in the warehouse. And then it's put on including the wainscoting, everything that we give them. They build it in the factory. They put it on a truck, they drive it out here, and then they crane it in and drop it on a pad that has been prepared for the bathroom to be delivered.
And so, but the wainscot, that is actual stone, right? It's not just facade.
No, it is actual stone, much like what you're seeing on our monument signs. We've matched it to blend with the monument signs, and it's a little bit different from the event center, but it matches with the monument sign, and similar to Sumac as well.
Okay, great. The trees, I know you've already told me that no oak trees will be impacted, but we may lose another tree. Is that right?
So I will say, no oak trees are at risk right now for being removed. We have one tree, depending on, we're still working through the grading and prepping of the pad. There's one tree that is a little bit of a concern to us, potentially 2. We're going to do everything we can to save those trees.
But those are not oaks?
They are not oaks.
Okay, and if we lose them, will we replant somewhere near the bathroom?
Absolutely. I would love to even plant it just next to it, away from the existing structure.
Great. And getting back to Councilmember Wolf's questions about the lighting, so how bright are we talking? 6, are they up in the air, or are they low lighting down on the ground?
They're 15-watt LED, and they're facing down. I caught myself when I was saying that.
Okay.
Not too much lighting.
Right. Okay, those are the only questions that I have. Thank you.
Councilmember.
No, I'm very excited about it, and Chris and I have met with you several times to discuss it, and I defy anybody to say that it's a prefab building once it's set up, because I don't think they'll realize that. So I'm very excited, especially when you look at what's there now.
And I apologize. I should have deferred to my stellar community services subcommittee for comments before we.
Also, one thing you haven't talked about, but what's going to be happening also around it with the pathways that are going to be cleaned up and updated.
They absolutely are. So JT is heading up the sidewalk project. If you remember, we brought to you the CDBG project for the sidewalk overhaul. And we are going to be redoing, excuse me, the path of travel to the bathroom from the street. We are going to be expanding the sidewalk around about a third of the playground, and we're going to be redoing the landing area. And then there's actually going to be what's not part of this project that you're looking at right now. There'll be a 3-foot sidewalk around the entire perimeter of the bathroom, which is going to be really nice. We're really excited about that. And then we talked a lot at the subcommittee about enhancing the landscaping around there, which right now there is no landscaping. It's 35-year-old sludge. And so we're excited about that. So it will look really beautiful. We're really excited about it.
So can we, to address the lighting, can we add string lighting under the front of it for Mayor Pro Tem Buckley Weber? All good. At Christmas time, we could do that, maybe, or at holidays, excuse me. Holiday time
The hook's
period.
on there for the holiday light.
All good. No joke. I'm sorry about the jokes, but I had to get that in there. So, okay, so any other questions from the city council? Okay, we'll move into public comments. Written public comments were requested to be emailed in advance of tonight's meeting. If you wish to speak, please click the raised hand button on the Zoom toolbar now. Public testimony is limited to 3 minutes per speaker, and a speaker's time may not be transferred to another speaker. We respectfully request that if you have something to distribute to the council, you hand it to our city clerk and do not approach the dais. I will now defer to the city clerk.
Thank you, Mayor Anstead. No written public comments have been received and no speaker cards have been submitted. I'll now defer to staff for any remote participants.
Thank you, Mayor Anstead. No hands are raised to speak on this item.
Excellent, thank you. Does any council member have any further questions or comments? All
Yeah,
right. Well,
I just have a comment. I feel very lucky that I live close to Chumash Park with the current bathroom situation, so that I can go home. I think that this is long overdue. I think that this is our most used park by far, and I think it's fitting of something that looks like this. And so I appreciate that. And I do want to highlight, I appreciate the all-gender bathroom because that's the way things are going. And for us to include that, I think that's absolutely the right thing to do. So thank you for your work on this.
any other council member have any further questions or comments? No? Okay. We'll now move on to deliberations. That's what I'm moving to. All right, no problem. So how about Mayor Pro Tem Buckley Weber?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm excited about these bathrooms. We've been talking about it for a few years, the Shumash one, when we started it, I guess it was last year. And I'm excited, too, about the all-gender bathrooms. I'm really glad that we're able to incorporate that into this bathroom. We were not able to do that in the Sumac bathroom. I like that we have the baby changing area. I know we're not going to have a child's toilet because that would expand the footprint and becomes much more expensive and complicated, but I think our residents will be understanding of that. I love the stucco finish, the smooth stucco finish, just like we have at Sumac. I like the wainscot. I'm glad we're not going to be tampering with any oak trees or impacting any of them. And so I'm ready to, and we're having low downward lighting, so that's all good to me. So I don't have anything further. I'm excited about it, and good luck, and we'll look forward to getting that sometime this year.
Awesome. Councilmember Sylvester.
Yes, I would just like to follow up on what you said about the children's toilet. What we have been discussing with Amy is the height of the toilet seats, because there is quite a range, and if we can have them fairly low, then that is easier for younger children to use them. And so that, I believe, can you follow up on that, Amy, now, and tell us where we're at?
Well, ADA compliance puts a toilet between 17 and 20 inches, so we'll confirm what that is. But from an ADA standpoint, that's the range.
So we can have some that are lower, because in the all-gender bathrooms, we can make sure that they're higher for...
From an ADA standpoint, they all need to be within that range, so
Right.
we can't drop any lower.
No, but we could have 17-inch in the main bathrooms, and then if we have to have the 20, because 17 and 21, that's 3 inches. So that makes a difference to a child.
It also makes a difference to an elderly person.
Yes, but that's what I'm saying. So if in the all-gender bathrooms, we have
Mm-hmm.
them at the higher rate, and then maybe we could have 2 at the lower. So we satisfy everybody's needs.
If we put the lower one in, we're losing an adult bathroom. We're losing an adult.
Well, it's the size of an adult toilet.
And the height.
Yeah, but yeah, I know.
If we drop it too low, then we lose the option of, then you lose an adult toilet in the women.
But we
both
could
of
have
them.
it at 17 inches rather than 21.
Let us check that, and we'll confirm that.
Because I've been measuring all the public toilets I've been in recently. And some of them are really low, some of them are quite high. So I would like to see a couple of lower ones. That's my only, otherwise I'm really happy
Thank
with
you.
this.
We'll
Thanks.
confirm, Councilmember Sylvester.
Councilmember, I want to thank you for doing your public duty with So with that comment, I'll move to Councilmember Wolf.
I went out of order and I apologize. I provided my comments. But with the lighting, to Mayor Pro Tem Weber's point, I'm glad that we found the balance because for public safety, I think it is important for that to be well lit, but also take into concern wildlife. So thank you for that balancing act.
Councilmember Lopez.
Thank you. I have to share last year that when we had the ribbon cutting for the Sumac Park restrooms, I had relatives in town from the South, my cousins, and they came with us to this ribbon cutting, and there were balloons. I think we all showed up. There were photographers, and my cousins, from the South, they're like, y'all love your public restrooms. Like, they were so impressed. So yes, we do get very excited about our public restrooms, and I would ask that you let me know when the ribbon cutting is so that I can fly them out again for this one. But in all seriousness, yes, I met this company at one of the, I think it was League of Cities conferences. They have the vendor areas, and I met the company. I saw their products, little samples, and I was so excited. I got the card and I ran back and gave it to Amy, and she said, we're already on it. So, very comfortable with this company. Very, very happy about the all gender, which was a huge priority for us, and I think it's even law at this point, so it's important that we do that. Also very excited about the water bottle filling, which I think we do also have at Sumac, and I know people use that. And yeah, this is our busiest park with visitors because of concerts, and so I'm very excited, and thank you to the subcommittee. I'm definitely ready to proceed. Thank you.
You got it. Thank you very much for this comment. And my comments are pretty similar. I mean, I'm very excited to have this restroom completed. It was something that when I first got on the council that I talked about, and I felt like that when you went into our restrooms, that they were kind of scary, or they kind of are scary. And so it would be nice to have our main public park to be a premier, have nice facilities for our children and also our visitors that come to the park to be able to use. So I'm very excited. I love the water station. I love the additional restrooms. So everything about it's great. I think we also agreed to have a bike rack at it, or we at least we're looking at that. So I know that's something else that I'm excited about as well going forward. So I'm all for moving forward. I like the colors. I did not choose. My fellow council member, I let all the colors go to her. So any comments to the colors, make sure you talk to Councilmember Sylvester on the colors. So, but I love the colors. I mean, I like it. I think it's great with the stone front, and I think it's fantastic. So I'm ready to move forward. So I will now call for a motion and a second to approve the staff recommendation, which I know Amy read earlier. Will the maker of the motion and the second please state your names? Do I have a motion?
Mayor Pro Tem Buckley Weber moves.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second. Deborah Klein Lopez.
Thank you. I'll now defer to the city clerk for a roll call vote.
Councilmember Lopez?
Aye.
Councilmember Sylvester?
Aye.
Councilmember Wolf?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Buckley Weber?
Aye.
Mayor Anstead?
Aye.
Mayor Anstead, you have approval 5-0.
Thank you very much. We are now going to reopen the public hearing for comments not on the agenda. And so let me go back to that. I'm just going to read it. So this section is reserved for persons wishing to speak on items not listed on the agenda that are under the subject matter jurisdiction of the City Council. For council chamber attendees, please submit public comment card to the city clerk. For Zoom attendees, please click the raise hand button on the Zoom toolbar now. Public testimony limited to 3 minutes per person, and the speaker's time may not be transferred to another speaker. Persons addressing the council shall not engage in disorderly conduct that disrupts or otherwise impedes the orderly conduct of the meeting. We respectfully request that if you have something to distribute to the council, that you hand it to our city clerk and do not approach the dais. I will now defer to the city clerk for public comments.
Thank you, Mayor Anstead. We did not receive any written public comments. We do have 2 speaker cards, Sherry Ferber, followed by George Coleman.
Sherry?
Thanks for the opportunity to speak. My journey with George and Kathy Coleman began 11 years ago when we were the first 3 volunteers with Save LA Cougars. Without Kathy, this journey would not have been created. I only regret that my email arrived too late for Kathy to know that her book had helped us to create a matching fund that totaled another $9,000 contribution, and that her book had again sold out at Save LA Cougars. I will cherish our long last phone talk. It was full of laughter and Kathy's spirit. She will be missed.
Thank you, Sherry, for those comments.
Our next speaker is George Coleman.
Do I have my usual 3 minutes?
We'll give you a little extra tonight.
I wasn't sure I was going to speak tonight. I want to thank the city for putting together a tribute for Kathy, and I want to thank the staff for years and years of working with us and with Kathy. And I might tear up here, but Kathy and I have been friends for 52 years, and we lived in Jackson Heights, Queens, New York. We lived in Glen Cove, Long Island, and we lived in Calabasas, where I was on the Cityhood Committee in Calabasas. Kathy, there was nothing like this city to her. She loved it. And she loved doing work for the city and for all the other community programs, the old Agoura community, of course, and the wildlife crossing. I think many of you know she was very much involved in the advisory group and working with the people, the state political folk as well. But I have to say that she was 84. So a lot of people don't make it to 84, and she did, and was not sick very much, and was able to do a lot of beneficial things during her life, and participate in a lot of special things in her life, and raise a family also, who was very devoted to her as well. So I just wanted to communicate to you how much she appreciated all of you and prior administrations as well, and this particular city, and she loved doing stuff for it. So I want to thank you all for being kind to her, as she may have ruffled some feathers over the years, but it was not intended for you guys to take it personally. It was the bigger picture. And I thank you for all you've done to support her, and I thank you for this evening. God bless.
We do have one more speaker, Ed Corridori.
Good evening. I really didn't prepare anything, but I've lived here a long time. And we've lost people who have been special to this community. Dick and Dolores Crowley, Alan McGregor, people whose names I've forgotten. Kathy was one of those people who made Agoura Hills the special place that it is today. Kathy and George. And I just wanted to say that this community would not be what it is today without Kathy and people like her. Thank you.
Thank you. We have no further speaker cards. I'll now defer to staff for any remote participants.
Thank you, Mayor Anstead. No hands are raised to speak on this item.
Okay, thank you. I will now move to the City Council because I know we all have comments. So I'll start with Councilmember Wolf.
I first met George and Kathy Coleman about 11 years ago, and I met with them every Friday to talk about saving the Chesbro Meadow, and that's when I first really met you guys and learned what you meant to the community. I also want to highlight that you guys really were the trailblazers in the Save LA Cougars. It's taken on a life of its own. It's world famous, but you guys were the ones that hosted Beth Pratt at your house when there was this little idea that the community hadn't bought into yet. And Kathy really helped to spearhead that. And what I love and miss, and one of my favorite parts about Kathy was her art and how it inspired us all to care about our wildlife, and how in her art, she made mountain lions, they personified resilience, and they made you feel a certain way. And I'll never forget that in Senator Stern's office, we borrowed, it was P12, the granddaddy of them all. And every day walking into our office, it was the first thing I saw, and it was on loan for 6 years. And every single person who walked into that office saw that piece of art, and I think it inspired them a little bit. So you both are so integral to the city of Agoura Hills. And to look around the audience and to see that half of the people in the audience's faces are also up there shows just how much she meant to the community. She will be dearly missed, and sending my love to you and your family.
Councilmember Lopez.
Thank you. So I like to think that no matter when you moved here, you know of the Colemans before you get to know the Colemans, right? Like if you move into Old Agoura, or if you're just starting to get involved in city life, their name would come up, and they had this reputation and this persona, and so I knew of Kathy Coleman and George long before I even met you, just because of the history that you have in this town. And so I really got to know Kathy personally a little bit better, probably right around the time she was illustrating the book about P22. And I know that Sherry will agree with me that it is one of her proudest accomplishments in life. And that's when I got to know her, and she was so alive and spirited about this book, and I think it was a really special time in her life. And it was a pleasure to get to know her a little bit better during that time. And right after that, I decided I was going to run for office, and she did the very scary thing of inviting me to the Old Agoura barbecue. And if you've ever been to the Old Agoura barbecue as a candidate, they size you up, and they ask you questions. And Kathy was like in a corner, kind of like holding court. She had her book, and everybody would walk by, and pay their respects to Kathy in the corner, and I'm very, very thankful to say that I think I got the thumbs up from her because they offered to host a meet and greet for me in their beautiful home. And as Councilmember Wolf said, what a home, right? You can't even believe the beauty from the outside, overlooking the Chesebro Meadow in the heart of Old Agoura, but just as beautiful on the inside with all of her art. And it was such a meaningful gesture for me and really started a friendship with us. And she shared some struggles that you've had in your family with me that I know she didn't share with everyone, and it meant a lot to me, and I was honored to hold her confidence. You know, she invited me over to, when I became mayor, to go through the stacks and stacks of archives that she had. And I came with Amy with piles and piles of things and articles that she's collected over the year. I mean, over the years, she was just a treasure trove of information. I will mention, as George alluded to, so having that confidence with Kathy also came with a level of what I'll call honesty. And so I was the recipient, and as I know a lot of our council members were, of that honesty. More than a few scathing emails when Kathy was upset with something about the city. And despite the lashing, I always did know, and I know we all did, that it was her gestures were out of concern for the city, based on a deep love for the city, and she was always protective and acting in a way that would protect our city. And finally, I'm going to share one story. I'm sure everybody has so many stories about Kathy, but I'm going to share just one. I'm wearing these earrings tonight in honor of Kathy, and you might say, what are these earrings? They're just like cheapo TJ Maxx or something earrings. But they're very special to me, and I think of her every time I wear them, and I'll tell you why. I was wearing them one evening at a council meeting. It was fairly early in my term, very nervous about being on the dais and being recorded and saying the wrong thing. And she made sure to drop me a note to tell me how much she loved seeing these earrings on the dais. And I want to read her note, which I've saved, because it was one of those early emails I got as a council member. She said, "Hey, I do not know how wonky this sounds. Loved those earrings you were wearing tonight. George and I had dinner, came home, and watched your vote procedure via live stream. I not only loved that convenience, but I once again noticed how terrific your earrings complimented you. Gotta remember, I am a visual artiste. But most importantly is how much I admire all that you do. Appreciatively, Kathy." And I've kept that message all those years, and I do think of her every time I wear these, because what struck me is that, you know, she found beauty in the tiniest little things, and even the things that, you know, we didn't notice or we didn't pay attention to, she found beauty in it and she shared it. And that is what I will always remember and love about Kathy. So deep, deep condolences. I send my love to you and your family and our community.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Buckley.
Thank you. A French impressionist, Edgar Degas, said, "Art is not what you see, but what you make others see." And Kathy made us see animals, people, and outdoor spaces, and specifically P22. She brought P22 to life with her book. And as Sherry said, honestly, George and Kathy and Sherry were the first residents to support Save LA Cougars and the concept of a wildlife crossing here in Agoura Hills. And I remember it specifically. You three were in from the very beginning. Kathy was also an activist, That's what I would call her, as Councilmember Lopez pointed out. One day you'd get an email that would be just scathing, and then the next day I'd get one saying, "You know that I love you," and it'd be like, "Yes, I do." And she just felt very strongly about the city of Agoura Hills, and most importantly, Old Agoura and the Old Agoura Homeowners Association. And you can't mess with Kathy when it comes to the Old Agoura Homeowners Association. You cannot get in her way. She always let us know how she felt, and actually, even if the emails were scathing, I appreciated getting her input because it was important to know how Kathy Coleman felt about an issue. She personally sent me lots of photos of interesting art, a lot of public art, and because we shared the love of art in public places. And she also made recommendations when I would travel. She would give me museums and galleries and things to check out. And I did check out a couple in Boston, and they were fabulous. And so we would talk quite a bit about different museums. She was a beautiful person inside and a real beauty on the outside. There's no doubt about it. And she always welcomed us into your home. Fundraisers, meet and greets, whatever it was, Kathy was more than happy to just open the door and say, "Bring it in and let's do it." She couldn't have helped us anymore. It didn't matter what it was about. She was very supportive about the housing. She really took our side and gave us a lot of support when we had to certify our housing element. And I think she just really helped in Old Agoura to really get people to understand how the dilemma that the city of Agoura Hills was faced with by the state. And she sent some those are the last emails that I got from her was, "Don't worry, we're there for you," and, how much she loved us and how great we all were, and she just couldn't have been more supportive. And that was very brave of her, because that was such a controversial issue. In the end, again, she was very brave in her passing, and so I just, she's going to be missed. We all loved her, and George, we send you our condolences to you and the family, and just know we're always here for you.
Well, I feel cheated because I didn't know her very long, and the rest of you had many years with her. But I only met her once I came onto the council, and both Kathy and George sent me a sweet note of support when I got elected, and I appreciate that. But I do know that she really wanted to create an archive in the city, and that's something that we're planning on doing. And I think we have to, as part of that archive, we have to have something, her name somewhere in that, I think would be lovely, because we do have so many materials, and we are going to be getting somebody that will start archiving it so it'll be there permanently. I'm so sorry for your loss, George. My condolences to you and all your family.
And George, my comments are, first of all, the fact that both you and Kathy have been involved in this community is just a testament to your marriage, I think, and the fact that a lot of marriages, at least mine, one or the other wants to be more involved than the other, and the two of you seem to be very involved in this community at all times and on different issues. And the first time that I met Kathy was with the P22 at the state park when we were first talking about the wildlife crossing. And then the second time I saw her and got to know her a little bit better was when she had her book and she had the P22. She said, "You got to buy this, you got to buy that." So I was buying quite a bit of stuff when I was at that fundraiser, and I enjoyed doing that. She made you feel very comfortable, and she was so friendly with everybody. And then when the fires happened, when I actually got elected after running for a couple different times, I remember I went to your home. She's very open with the home, and then showing me all the stuff that had gotten burnt in the fire. And so that's something that I really remember about the hospitality and about how kind both of you were. And again, how it's a package deal. with the two of you, and I thought that's so great. I think Ed and Joyce Corridori emulate that as well, and I love that about them. And so it's something great, and I have a lot of memories from those times with the two of you, and at the old Agoura picnics as well, and talking to her at that. So I just can't say enough great things about her that when I did get to know her, and just the kindest person when you got to know her. I'm sure there were some other emails I probably wasn't privy to, but I definitely enjoyed spending the time that I did with her. And again, I'm so sorry for your loss. And still, anything that you need from this city, we owe both of you a huge debt of gratitude for everything that you've done, everything from advocating for the environment with the wildlife crossing to making sure that we've got our statutes on the housing issues, on the short-term housing. So I mean, there's all kinds of issues that I could talk about. But I want to just thank you from the bottom of my heart for being involved and caring about the community. I think that's the one thing that I always like. There's been many council members that I haven't necessarily gotten along with or had the same viewpoints, but I know that they're spending a lot of their time and effort to help. They actually only doing it because they care about the community. And that's exactly with you and Kathy, that I know that you care deeply about this community, and I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart from both of you. So thank you again, and sorry for your loss. Thank you. And tonight we will close this meeting in memory of Kathy tonight. So the next regular city council meeting will be held at 6 p.m. on Wednesday, June 28th, 2023, in the council chambers of the Civic Center. It is anticipated that members of the public will have the opportunity to participate in person in the council chambers or by remote video conferencing. At this time, we will adjourn tonight's meeting in memory of Kathy Coleman. Will the maker of the motion and a second to adjourn in the memory of Kathy please state your names?
Mayor Pro Tem Buckley Weber moves to close tonight's meeting in memory of the one and only Kathy Coleman.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second. This is Deborah Klein Lopez.
Thank you very much. I'll now defer to the city clerk for a roll call vote.
Councilmember Lopez?
Aye.
Councilmember Sylvester?
Aye.
Councilmember Wolf?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Buckley Weber?
Aye.
Mayor Anstead?
Aye.
Mayor Anstead, you have approval 5-0.
Thank you. This meeting is now adjourned in memory of Kathy Coleman.